Hi, welcome everyone to our fundraising session. Thank you so much for joining. I am going to quickly do some housekeeping while we get started here. So if you haven't already put in the chat, let us know where you're joining in from. We'd love to hear from you. This is an interactive session, so we would love to have you on camera in the later portion of our live Q&A. You can keep your camera off or leave your camera on now during our initial presentation. But once again, this is meant to be sort of a workshop. So the chat function is available as well as the Q&A. So don't forget to put those there. But let's just get started. I'm going to give you the quick bios of all our amazing speakers. First is Erin Arnheim. After working in the financial services industry for 20 years, Erin transitioned over into the nonprofit sector and joined Legacy Collective. And she currently serves as the CEO. Legacy Collective is a community of givers who commit to a monthly donation of $35 all the way up to $1,000. And their impact is truly, truly impressive. They've raised over $4.5 million to date as a giving circle. And she also co-hosts an amazing podcast called Elevating Their Impact, which highlights nonprofits from around the world that are making sustainable impacts on systemic issues. We also have Yolanda Johnson. She has more than 2 decades of experience in the nonprofit sector. She has successfully led fundraising operations for a number of nonprofit organizations in the areas of events, sponsorships, marketing, and then securing funds across foundations, corporate, government funding, and of course, major donors. So really, really a true rock star here. In addition to leading her own consulting business, Yolanda is the founder of WOKE, which is Women of Color in Fundraising and Philanthropy. She's also founded Allies in Action membership network and is also president of Women in Development in New York City. So thanks for being here, Yolanda. We also have Paul Ocampo. He is the founding member of Lacuna Giving Circle, which is a collective action fund that supports organizations serving the Asian American and Pacific Islander community in California. He's director of development at Asian Americans Advancing Justice, Asian Law Caucus, which is the nation's first legal and civil rights organization serving the API community. And he is also co-chair of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders in Philanthropy, the SF chapter. And he serves on a number of boards, including the Kearney Street Workshop and Association of Fundraising Professionals. Good friend, thanks for being here, Paul. Last but not least, Lindsay Simonds. She has her own fundraising consulting business after many years leading high impact fundraising campaigns as vice president of CCS Fundraising. She's directed and managed initiatives raising over $1 billion cumulatively and collaboratively. She specializes in capital campaigns, board engagement, and leadership consulting. And then she's had notable clients such as UCSF Medical Center and March of Dimes. So, she's really such a true force. And she also has a podcast. I would encourage you to check it out. It's called Creating Community for Good. And she regularly co-hosts that. So. Oh, last but not least, I'm Kyson Bunthuwong, Director of Development at Philanthropy Together, which is hosting the We Give Summit. But let's get started. So let's just dive right in. So this is a little bit about them. Next, a little bit about you. We did a quick pre-survey of the attendees and want to gauge the comfortability level of fundraising for all of you in this room. And it was actually really great to see a large percentage enjoy some aspect of fundraising, whether that's getting lunch with a donor, building killer social media campaign, even, I don't know if you build donor databases in Excel, whatever that might be that you love in fundraising. We always say there's something in fundraising for everyone. So glad you're here. And then really quickly for our agenda, the one we're gonna dive right in. Here, we're gonna set the framework and ground us in some fundraising principles. And then we're gonna spend the majority of our time with the live panel Q&A. And thank you everyone for submitting some initial questions to get us started. So Lindsay, I'm gonna kick it off to you to start with our fundraising principles.
Okay, hi, Lindsay Simonds. Can everybody hear me okay? All right, good. Thanks for the thumbs up and interaction. I'm so thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation, Kyson and Sarah, and I'm really honored to be here with you. The photo below is me shaving my head. Well, actually, I wasn't doing it myself. The next photo that followed this was tears running down my streaming down my face. So if anybody's ever done anything totally wild or dramatic to their image, or to their persona or to their career, you know what it's like to go through a major life shift and change. Now, I don't often show this picture, but because my professional photo is so polished, I really want to humanize myself here. My why for creating community and being a part of philanthropy is that community is what got me through my journey in life. And I have tremendous debt and gratitude towards my education system and towards my opportunities to travel and see how the rest of the world lives. I grew up in Colorado, and it's a very Colorado than around the world. So when I had the opportunity to gain exposure, to understand different cultures, different foods, different languages, different ways of being, I started to shift my mindset from that myopic, singular focus to coming into the world as a teenager, and then into college. So right out of school, I was drawn to figuring out how I could better unite communities that are diverse and different based on backgrounds, priorities, experiences, and not to mention, of course, ethnicities, color, race, gender, sexual preference, but really trying to bring together folks with shared values and common goals towards making the world a better place. So that's my why. Kyson, what's yours?
Definitely. And I talk to my why, or go back to my why a lot when I'm with donors or people that are trying to get interested in the giving circle. For me, my why kind of stems back to this really stark statistic, which is only 2.2% of National Foundation funding goes to Asian American and Pacific Islander serving organizations. And this is why I joined the Lacuna Giving Circle with Paul. And there's just some injustice in that level of giving, and that's why, I do what I do, and, why I am a fundraiser. And then even digging deeper than that is kind of this picture of my immigrant grandparents. This is them in their grocery store in Berkeley in the 60s. They've shaped a lot about why I support API causes, and that generosity really stems from familial values, knowing how hard they worked. So, for me, bringing that story into donor conversations and trusting that that's part of the relationship building process, I think really sets this up as fundraisers or people going out and asking for funds in the right way. So,
Kyson,
which also
just add to that, just one headliner, just to summarize. So we shared our stories sort of to give a testimony, but it's something to know that all throughout your experience of fundraising or philanthropy and engagement, it is core to share a little bit about who you are and what your why is, but then really what's the mission's why. So that's sort of the modeling.
Wonderful time. Thank you. And once again, to further ground us in that, that's going back to our mindset. Like, what is this fundraising mindset that we all should be giving ourselves? I don't know how many of you have seen this. I'm sure you've seen this movie, Forrest Gump. There's this famous line, I won't even do the accent, but my mom always said, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. So how can we really prepare ourselves to go on that scary world and fundraise if we don't know what life's chocolates are we going to get? So going in with the right mindset. As a millennial, I put together a 5 emoji point overview for you, and this is how we'll think about that. 1, opportunity mindset over deficit mindset. So how often do we think of fundraising in terms of starting off with an empty thermometer or starting this uphill climb to the top of a mountain? I think with the nonprofit and philanthropy sector in particular, you see this culture of this poverty mindset, this deficit mindset, not really having enough money and having to chase it. This mindset is often driven by fear, but we know that great fundraisers are able to avoid this mindset. And the sooner you can think of fundraising as more of an opportunity or a world where you can make an impact, an opportunity for connection, an opportunity for new growth, the easier it's going to be for you. The second thing we think about is relationships. So if we're too focused on selling our cause or organization over building relationships, I think this is where we can fall into some pitfalls. I would definitely argue that it's more important to build relationships and connections at the end of the day than purely selling what your impact is. So the third one, at the root of fundraising, of course, is raising funds, but that does not mean you can't get creative. So what does that mean to do to get creative? Well, just think outside the box. Use those creative muscles in your brain to find unique opportunities to really pull your prospective donors and prospective Giving Circle members into what you're working on. Great example, Ice Bucket Challenge. That was not born out of thinking about how to raise X amount of dollars using this fundraising plan and this strategy. It all came about because of our willingness to think about a fun, unique, creative way to mobilize more funds into that cause. So don't be afraid to fail with new creative ideas. The fourth one I would say as a mindset is keep calm, carry on with curiosity. Bring that calm, bring that curiosity to those relationships you're trying to build. Curiosity really is essential in fundraising, and yet it's underutilized as an approach. It's hardly ever discussed as well. So I would say, shape your kind of donor conversations, shape your thinking to bring thoughtful conversations and questions to who you're meeting with, and build upon that. Use phrases like, tell me more. How did you learn about that? Why are you doing this? All those kind of natural curiosity points really point us in the right direction with fundraising. The last but not least is fortune favors the bold. So although this is an ancient saying, I would say it helps developing this boldness in your fundraising, which helps people connect with something larger than themselves, something larger than what's presented directly in front of them, helping them know that there is a vision behind what you're doing. There is something that, I don't know if you've heard this term, BHAG. What is your big, hairy, audacious goal at the end of the day that you're trying to achieve? No one's going out asking for money because that's just what they do. There has to be some big, larger vision or meaning behind it. So please think about that. So that's the mindset I want you to go into with this. And Lindsay, I'll pass it off to you to cover our last area.
Thanks. How's the audio now? I was getting some feedback. I was a little quiet. Kyson, is it good?
Good.
Okay, I'm seeing nodding. Good. Well, so fundraising does fall flat occasionally. So let's explore why. And if you'll go to the next slide, I just love this animation of Lucy from the Lucy and Arnez old show. I love Lucy. And how hilarious that as much as you try, hoarding isn't the answer, right? We learned that during COVID. So let's look at what actually does cause fundraising to occasionally fall flat. On the next slide, we've got a few bullets here, and I'm actually going to jump straight down to the bottom one and tie it to the first one. So the last one is external factors. So when I started with the industry of philanthropy and fundraising, it was right around the crash, the economic recession, and we did feasibility studies to understand across the nation, how are people feeling about the economy? Is it a good time to be fundraising or is it not? Most of the survey recipients or respondents said it's not a good time. The economy is crashing. Don't make an ask for money. Then what do we know about why people make gifts and why people contribute is because they're asked. So over time, a longitudinal study that we can now look at in 2020, 2021, we can look back that decade ago and realize that actually those who continued to engage their donors and invite them to give, sharing with transparency and openness, they saw that their giving not only stabilized, in many cases increased, because there was that shared common challenge or strife of the recession that those who could would and did. And we saw that again this year with the economy, with the pandemic, with the crashes, the ups and downs, all the social uprising. What we saw in 2020 was that giving increased by 10% year over year. So giving does, don't hold on to external factors like the COVID or pandemic or recession or the economic climate. That's not a reason why fundraising falls flat. It's only a limiting belief system. So if you go back to Kyson's thinking about having that expansive and opportunity-minded thinking. So when your fundraising is falling flat, it's probably because folks are afraid to ask. Maybe they're reluctant to ask. Perhaps they're inviting folks in a sheepish way because they're not really sure how the other person will respond or how they're coping with the economy or the different space that we're in right now. So I'd recommend recommend go forward, be bold, and go ahead and have dynamic conversations. One of the other points here is that we're not really having strong relationships. Number 6, it's transactional instead of partnership. At this time, more than ever, we're seeing that in all survey responses and in all of our one-on-one anecdotal engagements, our donors want to hear from us as fundraisers, as nonprofit leaders. They want to know, what are the challenges? What has not worked for you? What is working, right? How can we help you? Where is treating your partners, your donors as partners rather than ATMs, right? So CCS is where Kyson and I met, and that's where we've got a lot of training from. And we talk about case, leadership, prospect, plan. So if any of those 4 pillars are not really activated, you're going to be struggling. So number 2 is perhaps you don't have enough prospects, or maybe it's that you don't have the right potential donors. So are you really aligning folks with your story, like we started off with, your values, your mission, and truly your aspirational thinking? Then it's looking at your leadership. So do you have folks who are in a position that is influencing others? And are you sharing that? If somebody is a new donor and they have great influence, then let them shout it from the rooftops for you. So being that third-party endorser, somebody who can help you beyond your own pitching, right? Realistic targets. It's so important to have KPIs and benchmarks that you can really achieve and track over time. Sometimes when you're making a solicitation and you're just not really clear about what you're doing, that's going to be a reason why fundraising falls flat for sure as well. In terms
All right.
of the summary, yeah, Kyson.
And that was really just all to ground us and get us into this next portion, which is our Q&A. Thankfully, like I said, you did send in some initial questions. Please come on camera, and we are going to get this started. So I think we did have to address some initial questions from our attendees. Our first one is actually, I'm going to give it over to Yolanda. What does an ideal donor relationship look like?
Hello, everyone. Great to be here. So an ideal donor relationship, I would say, points to all of the things that you and Lindsay just mentioned about taking away that transactional element. There's a quote that I've said, I even made the t-shirt, that fundraisers are beacons of hope and light that are illuminating the path to the good work that needs to be done in the world today. And so I said that because I really believe it. I think there's a certain amount of pride that we have. My work exists at the intersection of fundraising and philanthropy. So I have an interesting perspective sometimes from hearing from both philanthropists and from the fundraising side. So I try to help the communication there. And it's a matter of lighting the path. You're really a matchmaker of sorts because you have the passion to be where you are, be in a place where you love what you're doing and you love the mission, because that's infectious and it lends itself to real relationships with donors. Get to know your donors. One of the biggest pain points that I've seen in the nonprofit sector over the past couple of years even is the lack of good record keeping. You know, that institutional knowledge, taking the 5 minutes to just go put something into the database and remember what's going on with the donor, because we need to remember all of those little details. And remember this, it's not transactional, it's real, but we're always getting toward our authentic best selves in our relationships with our donors, right? So what I mean by that is when you go to the doctor's office, like I have some doctors, I love them. They're not even in my network of insurance anymore, and I just pay whatever it costs to still see them because I love them. But it's because of that bedside manner, of the way that they, work with their patients. And I actually liken that to fundraising. Before you go into a doctor's appointment, you think with a good doctor, they know everything about you, right? You walk in, they remember the last conversation you had. They don't remember. They're nice people. They're talented. They know what they're doing. They have a chart. And they took good notes and they read it a few minutes before you came into your appointment. And that is how the relationship continues because they care enough to remember and then to continue that conversation to give you better care. And so we're caring for the good work in the nonprofit sector. And one of the best ways to do that is to really get to know your donors, to light that path for them, to connect the dots in those beautiful ways. You know, that goes as far as not making assumptions about donors of color and always going to them for the DEI project. I've had some donors of color tell me, you know, I'm actually really interested in art and I want to make sure that equity continues and moves forward, but I'm an individual above all else, and then, you know, everything else comes into play. So to really get to know your donors, keep in touch, keep good records so that you can have real conversations, so you can connect dots for programs and opportunities that will be a really good fit for them, and they'll know that you cared enough to pay attention.
I love that, Yolanda. What a great analogy of the doctor's experience, because everybody can connect with that, right? Paul, I'm seeing you nod. Paul and Erin, I'm going to
Yeah,
launch
and
this one. Yeah, go ahead. You want to
I
make a
just
comment?
I
You've
just
got a
really
question for the right.
appreciate Yolanda's. Oh yeah, I appreciate Yolanda's point about being your authentic self when you're in that space, because that's the only way you can really connect with a donor and in some ways move them along, even in the mission of your organization or your giving circle, and also along those levels of giving, right? So that's so key. So thank you, Yolanda.
Is unmuted. I want to ask you a question that was submitted, and it's about giving circles. So switching into that concept, how do you get your current giving circle members to deliver on what they've already committed to? Not just signing up, but going beyond that, encouraging others to join them. And, you know, how do you even look at the giving minimums and levels? How do you get them to engage and activate?
Yeah, I'll start first with, you know, how Kyson first introduced me. I think he said I'm a co-founder of Lacuna Giving Circle. And when we founded the Giving Circle, it wasn't a one-person sort of vision. And first we recognized that the giving to the API community is really horrendous. 20 cents for every $100 from National Philanthropy. And that's been going on for, you know, 30 years since they created that first study. And they recently released an update of that study, and it's the same sort of rate. And we're seeing anti-Asian hate occurring these days. And we feel that organizations are not equipped, they're under-resourced to address this issue because of that problem. But in building the Giving Circle, you know, I engaged my friends, especially those who work in the social justice sector, and asked them the why. The why is so important. I wanted them to help me build the mission, the values alignment. What are these pieces? And why are we building this Giving Circle together? And I think that's really important for sort of how to engage them, not just to sign up, but really the commitments. And so I have 8 co-founders for Lacuna Giving Circle. We came together, we decided our mission, we decided the communities we want to support. And then from then on, building on their skills and really engaging on their interests. The folks that I engage for my Giving Circle are not all in the nonprofit sector. They're not all fundraisers. They come from communications background, marketing background, but have a social justice lens in approaching their work. And so these are the pieces I think that helped, you know, engage and build the work of Lacuna Giving Circle. And then it's in some ways the commitment, the giving level was no longer an issue. They were willing to put in whatever ask that I would put on the table, just thinking about our goals, thinking about the community we want to support. And then being creative. Giving circles allow us to be innovative, creative, thinking outside of the box, and not be a traditional institution, philanthropic institution with so many rules and regulations. How can we together bring in our great ideas? And so, you know, annually we have an annual retreat that we hold offsite at Guerneville, and that was pre-COVID. And then we continued that through Zoom and just having a Saturday morning to get together and realign and remember our North Star. And I think that's what brings community for us and allows the success of the Giving Circle. So I'll stop there and allow folks to ask questions or.
Thanks, Paul. I'm really hearing that you are customizing your group. You're making it real. You're not just following a playbook, but you're engaging people where they're interested, meeting them where they are, and then growing together is what I heard.
That's right.
Wonderful. Well, there are a few questions that have been coming in, so thank you. Keep the questions coming. You can send them directly to me. You can send them to the entire group, or it looks like we've got that chat too, the chat bar open, and we've got a forum open. So if you want to repost that, Taisha, maybe that would be helpful. It's the wegivesummit.org/speakers, and that's forum. Here it is, community.philanthropytogether.org. So keep the questions coming. And truly, while I am sort of moderating, I'm encouraging you to unmute as well and speak up if you've got a question. But since we're such a large group, I don't want to just have it hanging. But if you've got a question, then jump in, raise your hand by putting that symbol over your image, or just speak up and we'll pause so we can hear your question. Until then, I'm going to direct it to you, Erin. So Erin, a question that came in is about our new world order, right? We went from the pandemic shutdown of social distance, and now we're opening up to where people are starting to get together in person a little bit more. I was on a Clubhouse chat this morning where somebody was talking about access equity. So some people are still going to be dialing in, and then others are going to be getting in person, getting into rooms together. What is your take on how we can actually build our comfort and protocol around fundraising activities, whether they're in person or online, in this new re-entry space we're in?
That's a great question. So over the past year, we've been doing quarterly dinner and learns. And so we have dinner and learns with our donor communities and our legacy giving circles, where we bring together a menu which builds community. So they're all making a similar menu that actually is aligned with a systemic issue. So our next dinner and learn is addressing a systemic issue around the Black community. And so it's a Black chef designed menu, which is fun. And so we're all making this meal together. And so we're doing these dinner and learns over Zoom quarterly together, but then we actually have reinstated our annual investor gathering event in October. So it's outside, so it's COVID safe, but we're all coming together in Austin, Texas again, which we're excited about. And so we're really trying to come together, but come together safely. We know that it's important to our community. I think the cool thing about giving circles is we don't look at this, even though we're talking about fundraising, as normal fundraising with normal donors. It's bringing community together. You know, giving circles is about community, and we don't even call our giving circles donors, we call them givers, because we're giving together and we're granting together. And so we're really excited about that. And then also we've brought together, we have an advisory board of 14 individuals who are doing dinners in their communities, not only with current givers in our giving circles, but with their friends and communities to invite them into our giving circles. So they're hosting outside dinners and events in their neighborhoods to bring people into the community. So we're still going to keep doing our online events together, especially for people that just aren't ready yet and feeling comfortable to get back into things and to keep that educational aspect. But we really want to start building people back into this sense of community again, because it's just important to who we are as a giving circle.
Love that, love that. Once again, super creative idea revolving around food, which I appreciate as a fundraiser, and just general human.
Yeah, if you listen to our podcast, we talk about food every single week. So we have to keep the events about it too.
Lovely. Well, I'm also going to shift. There's another question that we had that's a little more based on fundraising tactics. So I'm going to actually pose this to both Lindsay and Yolanda. How do you make a solicitation memorable?
Well, Lindsay, do you want to go? Should I go?
Follow you.
Okay. Oh, okay. I think I have to connect back to what I said before. It's memorable when you know what you're doing and you know the donor with whom you're dealing. The more information you have, the more creative you can be, the more authentic you can be, the more fun it can be. It's not a shot in the dark. You're well prepared. You know, by failing to prepare, you're preparing to fail. And I really do ascribe to that. So just understanding the context, understanding the situation, digging deeper, taking that time to understand, you know, if it's a donor. I really had it happen once before where there was a donor who I had my eye on and kept really good records because that donor was started as a live auction purchaser donor. And then I was like, that's interesting that they were willing to spend that much money on that item. And so we dug way deeper and understood that this person had this interesting affinity for old Hollywood. And took that and ran with it, found some things. You don't do what I call pretzeling yourself. It's just like when someone has money for you, but it has nothing to do with your mission or anything you do. Like, it would be far more work to have that creeping happen. But I understood that person. I understood the donor's motivation. I knew the types of things that they liked, and I knew how to connect the dots to exactly what my organization did. And so it made for a really fruitful experience, a very memorable one that actually ended up making millions of dollars in the end. It ended up being a licensing deal, all because I paid attention to the live auction donor. And so pay attention and do your research, and then you can have fun with it and make it a really meaningful experience.
Well, I can't, I wouldn't re-say what you've said, but that is definitely true. One other element that I would add to that has been really memorable from my end. So I'm just going to reflect on my experience as a donor. And when I've received a solicitation or a proposal that's in writing, in addition to that verbal solicitation, but where I had a photo, they presented me with a photo of myself or something that I've cared about. In my instance, it was a photo of me from a past event that we had been to together. So I thought that was really personal and personalized. It touched my heart. It brought me back to the room where that photo was taken. And it was a really quick way for that person to bond with me again and reminiscing over a time that we shared together, and then going forward towards that shared goal or objective that we're trying to achieve through the resource of cash. That's what fundraising is all about, right? It's just an energy and a flow of resources.
Wonderful. And I did see in the chat that Isis had a really great question. The question was, and I'm going to pose this to the entire panel, how and if do you call out funders with bad/inequitable practices or bad habits? You want to keep the relationship strong and great, but also shouldn't they be given honest feedback at the end of the day? So really kind of prickly question, but how do we build that type of honest, candid relationship with funders to give them that type of feedback if it's inequitable, if it's a bad habit?
I'm happy to take that one because it's been a topic that's been very present in our organization. So in our grant process, we changed our policies towards the end of 2020. And now as part of our grant giving process, we require diversity and equity inclusion policies that not only include hiring, employment, and client service policies. And we do run into situations where organizations do not have appropriate policies that we deem diverse and equitable if it's a faith-based organization. And they're great nonprofits, but they don't align with what we believe to be diverse and inclusive. And so we often have to have these conversations with nonprofits, just like people may have to have these conversations with funders. And so we have them respectfully and say that we understand that people may have different beliefs that impact those policies. But we also use it as a point of education to explain to them that faith and business practices are often two different things. And so we use it as a point of education, and we use it with care and with love in how we deliver that conversation. And I have seen people then attempt to go and come to us asking for examples of other organizations' policies to go ahead and change those. And so I just want to encourage people to have those difficult conversations, but do them lovingly and with care, and even provide resources, because I do think that's an opportunity for us to help organizations change their policies that no one's ever approached them to go ahead and change it. And so we see it as an opportunity to help organizations move forward.
I love it. Bake it into your process.
Yep.
Really great. It's upfront.
I've got another
I would
question
just
that
add,
came in.
to Erin, oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, to Erin's beautiful response. Yeah, I would just add to allow yourself to sit in that discomfort, because that's also a learning process for yourself as a fundraiser, and to take that as an opportunity. And again, to reiterate and to echo Erin's point about, you're going to help hopefully change their systems, their policies for the community, for the betterment of the community. So don't be afraid of being in discomfort, I would just say.
Great.
A tool I've seen work really well is a decision tree as well. So in addition to what you've said in sort of the philosophical stance that you're making, it's one clear way to say, well, this is how we make decisions. This is how we, accept gifts or whatever it might be. It's just plain and simple. It's not subjective, and it's in writing. Some of the deeper conversations that need to be had.
And sorry, if I can add one more thing to that, because we have a diverse board now, we've had some unusual things come up, and it's been great to bring in the people that those unusual circumstances have been in, to bring them into the conversation. And so I just want to encourage you, as you're having these uncomfortable conversations, the areas that those people are impacting. So for example, we came into a scenario where a grant was lying before us that the diversity and inclusion policy aligned for the US based entity, but not the entity abroad, because oftentimes in countries overseas, it's illegal to be part of the LGBTQ community. And so we had to figure out how we were going to address that as an organization. So we went to the people on our board that were part of the LGBTQ community. So I just want to also encourage you that when you come across these difficult conversations, to go to the people in your giving circle that are part of the communities that those difficult conversations are affecting, and have them help come to those conclusions as well.
And may I add one final thing to that, which just is, whenever the lines of communication are strong and open between you and the leadership of your organization or of your giving circle, there may come a time, it's only happened to me once, thankfully, and it really shouldn't have happened at all, because we never should have taken the funding from that funder, knowing that it was potentially questionable, or just knew that it could be problematic, and it ended up being problematic. So look at your ethics policies as well. They're just as good as telling someone something's based upon what the financial auditor said. Nobody ever questions that, right? The auditors told me, and my ethics policy tells me you can stand behind that. And sometimes you may have to make tough decisions after you get to know, there's a reckoning coming in the fundraising sector in many different ways, I think, because inclusion is the future. And so people that aren't aligned with that, it'll be very interesting to see. I don't have the answer. People have literally asked me what's going to happen to them. They'll go somewhere. I don't know where. That's part two. But the tough decisions may have to be made if it makes sense for your donor should align with you and your organization and your mission. And you don't want to get into ethical issues later. You need to survive. But that's why having the lines of communication open, so that if you need backup and you need, to replace some funds, you may have to do that. But it's better to take that longer road in the end than to end up in very precarious situations.
Yeah, no kidding.
And really quickly to one of the questions that came in the pre-survey was around moving from like this charity, or maybe you can think of it as like a savior type approach, to a justice-oriented approach to fundraising, and how do we get that movement going? And as fundraisers, I think it's to hold, once again, in this uncomfortable space around, yes, you may have $1 million dangling in front of me, but what does that mean if we're really looking at it from a justice lens? Are you just wielding power for your, self-interest or, personal motivations, whatever that may be? That power does not give you the ability to move us in a direction that's away from our mission, or move us in a direction that goes against what we really stand for as an organization, operationally or vision-wise. So I think money does a lot in terms of power, but it does not control ultimately the decision around how you build this relationship. Maybe you can move this person to that justice-oriented approach over 2 years, maybe not in that moment when they have $1 million, but 2 years down the line when you've done your research and helped them, educate them on what you're really about, and just kind of ground them in the issue. I think that's, once again, taking the long game, but the work needs to be done. The uncomfortability needs to be there. And yes, easy money is not always the best money. So.
That up because one of the questions that came in live during the chat, and this was a few minutes ago, so it actually builds nicely on what we're talking about, and I'll open this up to the entire panel again, is how do you balance honoring the specific wishes of a large donor versus moving people to more of a trust-based giving approach, which is sort of exactly what we're talking about here. Any thoughts?
Yeah, we have an annual, we call it investor meeting in January. We started it this year, and we have a fully transparent meeting with our giving circle. We did it on a Zoom call, and then for the top 2 levels of our giving circle, and then we put it online for the entire giving circle community. We were completely transparent. We showed them where we were gaining more funds, where we were losing funds. We gave them our goals and initiatives for the year ahead. We shared with them our successes and our challenges, our employment and hiring practice plans, and where we were, what was going well and what wasn't. And so the feedback was incredible. They hadn't had that level of transparency before. And I just encourage everybody to do it. Again, just to echo what I said before, this isn't like a average nonprofit raising money with donors. We're raising funds together as a community of givers, that we all get to do this together. It's such a special and unique thing. And we're all in it together as investors together. And I think we need to treat our giving circles as a group of investors that are all in it together. I think that's what makes this so special. So that's why we hold those meetings now.
Love that.
And, there was a study that came out several years ago where people were asked to either, they were given the option, either you can talk about yourself for 5 minutes or be given a certain amount of money. And everybody chose to talk about themselves. Because as human beings, we have this intrinsic need to feel heard.
Yeah.
And so, that we know that means respect if you've been heard. And I think that striking balance in those situations is one of the best ways I found to go about it. I hear you and I thank you and I appreciate you for your investment in this good work. And then to Erin's point, come with the information and what we would really like to do, because you're investing in us, these professionals who know how to move this mission forward. Here's a big picture proposal, and it infuses, your goal and your wishes into the work that we need to be doing and into the bigger picture goal that needs to be accomplished. And I think that can go a really long way for donors in those situations.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just add,
go ahead, Paul.
Just again, the point about being your authentic self, both as a person, as a fundraiser, and as your organization. And this conversation will always be two-way between you and your partner, your donor, whoever that donor might be. That might be your giving circle member or a philanthropic institution. And finding the alignments. There may be areas where you're not aligned, but what are those other areas that you are aligned? And then really deepening those pieces, strengthening that relationship around that. And I would also just say that, finding joy in this together, like just the baseline of it is, this is to philanthropy is supposed to create systems change, and I hope that's the goal too, and not just a one-off transactional. Oh, I'm going to help this one person improve their lives, but it's about, hey, how can we improve many people's lives together? And so philanthropy our goal should be to create that system change that we need.
Thanks, Paul. And I know we're running up against time. I think we have enough for one more question. And this, I think, hopefully will help everyone in this room, largely around like new prospective donors. So how do you encourage, find ways to get new people in the door, whether they're prospective donors or just Giving Circle members? Does anyone have tips for that?
Sure. I'll just quickly share that we're about to launch a college giving circle, and those college interns are on this call right now. I'm really proud of them. And just the point of that is to give access to college students at a really low entry level, teach them about philanthropy and what that looks like.
Do you want to put up the slides for this session so we're set and ready?
And help them build into that for the future so that they can be philanthropists once they graduate and are no longer students.
Access, definitely great.
Yeah.
I'm hearing a little bit of the background noise, but no worries there. I would also say it's being that evangelist yourself, being that third-party endorser. So saying what you love and why you're doing it and inviting your friends on a personal level to join you, even for just one meeting or for one experience that you can share with them. See if there's a natural hook or a natural bite.
Amazing. Well,
Encouraging.
I'm gonna have to close up. Oh, sorry, Paul. Did you want to do a real quick?
Oh, just really quickly, encouraging your members to explore new ways of engagement, whether that's a house party or like a poetry reading if they're a writer, bringing in other famous writers to be part of that.
What
then
I'll suggest,
you bring in other community members. But okay, thank you.
Thanks, Paul. I'm going to do one final quick rapid round question. What is one big takeaway that you would love to leave with this audience before we close out? Once again, please take the survey for the session if you thought it was valuable, and then head over to the next session. But everyone, I would love to hear your one quick final nugget of wisdom that you'd love to share with everyone in this room. I'll start with you, Erin.
Just the thing I love most about Giving Circles, it's a community that we get to be a part of. And that's something that I really appreciate and enjoy about this role.
Wonderful. Yolanda?
I would say that philanthropy is a beautiful thing, and collective philanthropy, just to really get to know people and to work together for that common good. So to always keep that in mind, the end goal, the desired end result, and then just being there along for the journey together.
Great. Paul?
Yeah, set your North Star together and bring joy to the work. Whether you give $5,000 a year or $5 million a year, just do it. Just bring joy to the work.
And Lindsay?
Oh, thank you. I was going to say something about happiness and joy and connecting as well. So I like that you said that, Paul. But yeah, I believe that it's finding your purpose and driving from there and connecting others along the way is going to make the journey so much more fun.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Thank you again for our panelists for leading this amazing discussion and answering all the questions. I know we're not going to get to all of them, but if you do have more, send them over into our community forum, community.philanthropytogether.org. But other than that, we will see you at the rest of the sessions. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.